Hi everyone, today we're going to start 11.1, which is circumference and arc length. And our goal is to find the lengths, arc lengths, and other measures. Circumference. Circumference is the distance around a circle. There are two equations we're going to use for circumference. The first one is pi times the diameter, and our second one is 2 times pi times the radius. So depending on if we are given the diameter or the radius, we use the certain equation. Next, we're going to talk about exact and approximate answers. Exact answers is where we're going to actually use pi in our answer. And the approximate is when we're going to plug everything into our calculator and round our answer to a certain decimal place. So let's start with exact. So here's our circle. I want to find the circumference of the circle. Well, if you look closely, we're given this length here. Is that length a diameter or a radius? Well, it goes from it's a chord that goes through the center, meaning we have a diameter. So I'm going to use my equation of pi times the diameter. That is equal to circumference. So now let's plug in 9 for the diameter, and I'm actually going to flip these around. 9 pi, I like to have the number in front of pi, but it doesn't matter. So 9 pi would be my exact answer. Now, if I wanted to approximate this, I would just plug 9 pi into my calculator, and when you do so, you get 28.27, and I just rounded to 2 decimal places. Be careful, make sure you use the pi button in your calculator. Pi is a number that goes on forever and ever and ever, and sometimes people use 3.14 to just round for pi, but since we want to know approximate, we want to make sure you use the pi button in your calculator. So once again, if you click 9 and pi, press enter, you will get approximately 28.27. Use the formula for circumference. Find the indicated measures. We want to find the exact and approximate answer, and we want to find the circumference of a circle with radius 4. All right, so my exact answer then, we're going to use the equation 2 times pi times the radius. So let's plug in what we know. What is the radius? It's 4. So 2 times pi times my radius, which is 4. I can combine those together. 2 times 4 is 8. So 8 pi is our exact answer. Now let's use an approximation. So if I plug in 8 pi into my calculator, we get approximately 25.13. Next, we're going to talk about arc length. And arc length is the distance along an arc measured in linear units. So this highlighted in yellow, that would be the arc length and the portion of the circumference of the circle. So once again, we're going to have two equations for arc length. The first one is equal to theta, which is your angle measure, whatever angle measure this is here, divided by 360 times 2 pi r. And also remember, 2 pi r is the circumference. So some problems might give you the circumference right away. And so our second equation for arc length is theta divided by 360 times the circumference. All right, so let's find the arc length, which is red here, and I'll highlight this in purple. Here is my arc length equation. So I first need to figure out, okay, well, what is theta? Well, we know it's 60 degrees. So I have 60 divided by 360 times 2 pi. What is the radius of my problem? It's 8, so times 8. Now we can just plug this right into our calculator, and we would get approximately 8.38. Let's practice this again. So I want to figure out what is this arc length. So I'm going to use my equation up here, theta divided by 360 times 2 pi r. So what is theta? Well, we know it's 60 again. Divide that by 360 times 2 times pi times our radius. Our radius is 11. And if we plug this into our calculator, we get approximately 11.52. For our next problem, we want to find the indicated measure. This time we want to find the circumference of the circle Z. So if you look carefully, we know what the arc length is. It's 4.19. We also know what the angle measure is, theta, 40 degrees, but we want to figure out the circumference. Now here's our equation, but remember 2 times pi r is really circumference C. So I'm going to rewrite my equation as theta over 360 is equal, times C is equal to the arc length. All right, so let's plug in what we know. Well, we know what theta is. Theta is 40. So 40 over 360 times C, the circumference, that's what we're looking for, is equal to, well, our arc length is 4.19. So now I want to get C by itself. Well, if I try to simplify 40 divided by 360, it's not a pretty number. It's crazy. So I'm just going to keep 40 divided by 360 how it is. So I'm multiplying 40 divided by 360 by C. So to get rid of multiplication, what would I do? I would divide. So I know that C is equal to 4.19 divided by the entire quantity, 40 divided by 360. So you want to be careful when you plug this in your calculator. Make sure that the 40 divided by 360 is in parentheses. And when you plug that into your calculator, you get approximately 37.71. So the circumference then of this circle is 37.71. Next, we want to figure out what is the circumference of circle N. Well, if we look carefully, we know that the angle measure is right here, 720. What is the arc measure of this circle? Oh, this is the arc that we're looking at. So what's the arc measure? It's 61.26. So I'm just going to plug in those values for my circumference equation. But once again, remember that 2 pi r, we know that that's the circumference. So when I rewrite this as arc length is equal to theta over 360 times C. We'll plug in what we know. Arc length is 61.26. And this is equal to my theta, which is 270 over 360, times that by C. We're just going to take this number and divide it on each side. So if I take 61.26, divide this by, and in parentheses, I'm going to have 270 divided by 360. That will give me my C value, which if you plug this in your calculator, it is approximately 81.68. And for our last problem, what if I know the arc length, I know my angle measure, theta, and I want to figure out what is the radius? Let's practice that. So, arc length is equal to theta over 360 times 2 pi r. What is my arc length? Well, it's right here, and we know that that is 10.5, is equal to theta. What's my theta? 150 over 360 times 2 times pi times r. And r is what we're searching for. All right, so since r is what we're searching for, remember that everything right here is just a number. 150 divided by 360 times 2 times pi. So I can simplify that even though it's not going to be pretty. If I plug that right into my calculator, I get approximately 2.618. And let's fill out everything else. I know that this was 10.5. I'm still searching for R. So to get R by itself, I'm going to divide 2.618 on each side, and I get that R is approximately 4.01. All right. So for the in-class assignment coming up, just be careful how you are rounding. Watch what I ask you to round for, and if you have any questions, please send me an email.